Detroit Homecoming has been made possible by the William Davidson Foundation, stimulating innovation, developing leadership, sustaining valuable programming, and tackling critical problems in 4 focus areas: Jewish life, economic vitality, cultural and civic vitality, and education. And by the Ford Foundation. We believe in the inherent dignity of all people and are guided by a vision of social justice, a world in which all individuals, communities, and peoples work toward the protection and full expression of their human rights.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Excellent. Everybody have a good time last night? Yes. All right. Well, it's an incredible time for people to be coming home to Detroit, or just coming here generally. And I've been thinking a lot about, well, why do people come to Detroit? And of course, for those of you who are coming home, that may be reason enough. You grew up here, or you're coming back to see family, friends, to bring back reminders of what Detroit was to you in the past. And that may be the reason that people are coming here, because they're interested in the past of Detroit. There's a lot to come here for if that's why you're coming. This is the city, this is the region, this is the state that created the soundtrack for the 20th century, that put the world on wheels, that defined what it meant to be middle class. Now, that may be the reason you're here, it may be the reason why lots of people are excited to come back to Detroit, but you also may be coming here because you want to see the future. And this is a place that is helping to define the future, because these days, the future of mobility is really being imagined and created here. You see the cranes up around town. We're constructing the future here. And you may be coming here because you want to see and imagine that future with all of us. But I want to suggest that one of the most exciting reasons for being here, right now, is because of what we're talking about and exploring and wrestling with in the present. It's not about the past, not about the future, it's about the present. At the William Davidson Foundation and with our partners and colleagues, we're wrestling with a lot of questions, including one, which is how do we create an inclusive and dynamic and sustainable economy? At the Davidson Foundation, we believe that entrepreneurs are at the heart of the answer to that question. And so I'm excited and thrilled that Mary and Jim and Colleen and all the folks that are organizing Detroit Homecoming have decided to spend this morning exploring some of these issues around entrepreneurship, middle class, and inclusive, dynamic, and sustainable economy. So when we're wrestling with these questions, I'm a data guy. I like to start with the research, and we have some incredible folks to come up to ground our conversation, and then we'll be going from the macro to the micro, maybe a little bit back to the macro. So I'm delighted to introduce Annika Goss from Detroit Future City and Antonio Lück from Endeavor, and they're going to walk through some data about the changing demographics and the changing economy here in the region. We're going to have a brief conversation, and then we'll invite up some local entrepreneurs to react to that and tell their own stories. So, Annika, why don't you come up and talk a little bit about Detroit Future City and your research.
Thank you. Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
I am thrilled to be here to talk about data at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's how I like to start every morning. But actually, I think what's really exciting for me and why I'm so honored to be here is that for us at Detroit Future City, we really believe that the African American middle class is the future of Detroit. And how we build a stable middle class for a city that's 80% African American, it's not just an attraction strategy, but it's a growth and stability strategy. How do we make sure that people stay here long term? And how do we make sure that there are opportunities for people to grow their own income and pathways for the middle class and have a place to stay and live? So last January, we released a study on Detroit's African-American middle class, and we did that for two reasons. One, 75% of Detroiters are making $50,000 or less. And Detroit Future City, we've identified middle class as between $46,000 and $116,000 annually, and that's that's compared to the national median income. So we didn't use the regional income. So that means the majority of us here in Detroit are making $75,000 or less, or $50,000 or less. The second reason is that only 25% of Detroiters fall into that middle class category. And that's compared to our suburban counterparts, where their middle class is about 33%. And so next slide, please. So what that means for us as a whole is that it will require 33,000 more middle-class households for us to become on par with the rest of the region. And furthermore, to maintain racial equity, that would then require 27,000 middle-class households of that 33,000 number to be African-American middle-class households. That's a huge lift for us. And this is a key point. This is really important because the way we're trending right now, next slide, please, more white middle-class households are moving into the city than African Americans. And that's something that we're really paying attention to. Specifically, and this is a data point that's really important, that 28% of African American middle class households lived in the suburbs in 2000. And by 2017, that number had jumped to 54%. And more importantly, which is also what's very troubling for us as a trend, is that 78% of white middle-class households are living in middle-class neighborhoods in the region, as opposed to only 33% of African Americans that are choosing to live in middle-class households. So this is really about choice. And if this trend continues, what we'll end up finding as we continue to grow Detroit is a city where our middle-class neighborhoods are more white and more wealthier, and the rest of the city remains very poor and very black. And I find that problematic, and I think we all should find that problematic. And so where we are really focusing in Detroit Future City, next slide, please, is that next slide, please. The real opportunity is the near middle class. And so it's not time to panic. We believe that there's a lot of opportunity here for us to grow the Detroiters that we have as middle class households, as well as identifying new ways. I always forget I've got my slides right here, so I don't have to turn around. As identifying new ways to create inclusivity in the communities that already exist. Because it would only take 13,300 near middle class households for a third of the city to become middle class. So if you look, let me just help you with this map, and then I'm going to sit down because I'm taking up too much time. So in the dark blue, those are middle class neighborhoods. And the areas around that are near middle class neighborhoods. That ends up being a third of the city. Imagine the kind of change that we can make in pathways if we really focus on strategic opportunities for families to grow their income, places where they can live, places they can work, and raise their families right here in Detroit. Thank you.
Thanks, Annika. We're gonna get into some. Go ahead, Antonio. We're gonna get into some more discussions this morning, but I know there's any number of explanations and solutions that we'll talk about with all the folks from Homecoming over the course of the next day or two. Good jobs, good schools, good neighborhoods. There's any number of things. We're gonna turn our attention a little bit more to the good jobs piece and good companies, and Antonio has some research to present from Endeavor.
Thank you. Oops, too fast. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Antonio Lück. I'm the Managing Director for Endeavor Detroit. For those of you who don't know, Endeavor is a global organization dedicated to driving and promoting long-term economic growth by providing support to the highest impact entrepreneurs around the world. And we do that by accelerating them, by first selecting them, accelerating them, and providing a slew of services. And why do we do this in Southeast Michigan? Well, we know that our region needs strategies that offer more than the traditional economic development in order to diversify our economy and create high-paying jobs in industries that are growing. Our recent analysis of more than 10,000 companies in Southeast Michigan has revealed an opportunity to do exactly just this. But that means we need to support a very specific type of company. And we call them a very simple name: large, high-value entrepreneurial companies. So bear with me, you're going to hear that name quite a bit. We know that traditional approaches of economic development are very, very important. But the data also shows that cities around the world with these types of companies that have local founders and which are called scale-ups sustainably employ the majority of jobs or employ the majority of people and create most of the jobs in the economy. So how do we do this in our region? We can do it by two ways. One, we need to increase the type of these companies. And second, we need to support large, high-value entrepreneur companies as they're growing. And if we want to pursue this strategy and these objectives, the best place to start is by targeting local sectors where we already have a competitive entrepreneurial advantage. And how does Michigan stack up against others? Relative to our size, we have 20 to 60% more large, high-value entrepreneurial companies in these sectors relative to the rest of the country. These industries are also projected to increase employment in the coming years and grow, and this can be a huge impact for our state. Regionally, we tend to focus on two sides of the spectrum. We're either talking about really small companies and startups or very large corporations. What we fall a little bit in the middle is really, or what we fall short is really focusing on businesses that really are in the middle. And this presents here a real opportunity for us. But we need the help of business leaders to support an approach that's called entrepreneur-led economic development. In our report, you'll see 4 very specific ways to doing this, but I'll bring one up here. And one which all the business leaders, the investors, and the entrepreneurs in this room can join us in, and that's mentorship. Providing entrepreneurs mentorship and access to networks is critical, and here is just an example, or a couple examples of why. When we mapped Endeavor's affiliate in Argentina, and more specifically Buenos Aires, the tech ecosystem there, 3 entrepreneurs influenced 80% of the companies in the entire ecosystem. And we're going to see that happening here very soon. Another great example is Vinnie Lingham. He's a serial entrepreneur in South Africa. And through this slide, you can see how his impact has been multiplied in so many different directions. We've mapped ecosystems around the world in many different cities, and we found that the same thing always holds true. That entrepreneurs who create and participate in the creation of these entrepreneurial ecosystems wouldn't have been successful without the mentorship of other entrepreneurs, founders, and supporters of high-impact entrepreneurship. It's important to remember as well that even all these high-growth companies start very small. We see our work as a part of a 3-pronged approach and a 3-pronged strategy. And it, of course, includes supporting neighborhood businesses, grassroots businesses, and large companies, and continuing traditional economic development activities. But it also should include a significant support to the companies that create the most jobs in our region and globally. Thank you very much.
Right. So we've just got a couple minutes or so before we bring on some of the entrepreneurs from our region onto this stage. But Annika, I wonder if, I know the research wasn't specifically focused on the relationship between entrepreneurs or black-owned businesses and middle-class growth, or the loss of middle-class growth, or the opportunities. But can you draw a connection between these two pieces of research for us?
Well, we should be. I was really excited to see your research, actually, because actually what we found when we were looking at the potential growth strategies where people were working, unfortunately right now, we're not seeing African American and Latino businesses grow. So in Detroit, Detroit is the 11th in the country for startups for minority-owned businesses, but they're not growing. They're not growing past the one person, one proprietorship, which means that what we have is a lot of low-income businesses. So that's actually not contributing to that growth opportunity that we're looking for. And we find that also problematic.
We heard, those of us who were at the opening dinner last night heard a little bit about that from Darlene, who said it's a different ecosystem here than it is in, say, California.
Right.
Antonio, do you have an explanation for that or thoughts on it?
I wish I had a full explanation for it. There's some ideas, I think, of how our industry was constituted here in the past and some of the things that were done with certain quotas. That was an issue. And I think the other part that is what we try to employ so much at Endeavor, and still even here struggle a bit, is really the role model approach. Is really being able to, like for Darnell, having role models that could really lead him into the high growth, right? And for him, for whom he could look up to. And role models that can also be investors that really believe in businesses to grow them in all of these spaces. But I agree, like we still have a lot of work to do in diversifying not only our economy, but our startups, our bases, and everything. And that's one of the focuses that we have in this region, is really trying to be able to create the right role models that
right.
and drive kind of the more importantly, really the belief that people can do it. I think that's the most critical part.
Right, well, we're going to welcome to the stage some people who do believe that they could do it. In fact, they more than believe it because they have done it. Yeah. And we're going to go from the macro to the micro. I think there are going to be chairs coming out on stage as I introduce folks. So let's see, Raj Vattikuti, who is the founder of Altimetric. He's going to be coming out to the stage. We have James Chapman, who is an entrepreneur. We worked with him at Rock Ventures. He's got a really interesting perspective to share. And Tony Tomczak, who is Chief Procurement Officer with DTE. Welcome to the stage. So, Raj, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us your story. You sold a $1.2 billion business, right? Many people may not know about that. They know about Doug Song and they know about others, but tell us your background.
A long time ago.
A long, long time ago. Okay.
Yeah, 2007. And Detroit has been really good to me. I came as a student, and then I worked in automotive industry, Chrysler mainly, for about 6 years. Then started my own venture with 5 employees, like it grew, and really focused on taking a lot of troubled projects and building the business. And went public on NASDAQ in '97, did well, and sold the business in 2007. Uh-huh. And since then, doing some ventures. One of them was the really robotic surgery here in Report Health System. We started more as a philanthropy, and then that became also a business, and eventually. And so first one in the world to do the robotic surgery for prostate surgery here in the world. That became a world standard. Now the robotic surgery is becoming a really household. And so those are the two things.
Well, I know you're an advisor to Antonio at Endeavor, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Yeah. Antonio talked about entrepreneurial-led development. And the concept is that once you create one business, then you have the resources to create another and also be able to invest in others and mentor others. Now you're involved in something called Altimetric, as I mentioned. Tell us a little bit about that, Antonio. I know you wanted to get into this.
Yes, I just want to mention another thing about entrepreneurial-led economic development. Entrepreneurs are our best researchers of our markets. Yeah. They know where the opportunities are. What we need to potentially do is really support them in achieving their success, because they will be able to find the best opportunities in how to grow and employ the right people. The other opportunity that really high growth companies have too, they are generally much more diverse than traditional industries, and that's also proven in data.
So Raj, talk a little bit about your path to creating Altimetric. What is Altimetric? And I heard something about a collider that you're building. What is that?
Yeah. So very much focused on the business transformation. I never wanted to do another technology company because it's so people-oriented. And when we saw every business now going through major transformation of their business, coming out with new business models, how to simplify the business. So that's where Altimetric started 6 years ago to have that focus. And it took some time. The market realized what it takes to do, how it should be done. For the last 2 years, we're getting very good traction in terms of it's all about the culture. How do we simplify business? How do we simplify technology so that we can get the right business models? Most important is the speed. He can bring it together. Collaboration is the most important aspect of it. So that's the reason. Most important is the talent, how we bring the talent who thinks that way. And so the reason Collider, we started here, is we have what we call playground, where the people can come and quickly with idea can do the proof of concept and go to market, not only for startups and mature startups, but also for the enterprise companies. And now more and more big companies are embracing our innovation approach. And so we're all over the world now in the financial services, healthcare, retail, and automotive. So all focus on the business transformation and simplifying things.
That's interesting. So you're supporting other companies. Yeah. You must have a lot of insights between your service as an advisor to Endeavor, but also the business that you're creating. What thoughts do you have on how we can make this a more attractive region and city to grow companies?
Yeah, I think it's most of the startups really need help to think whether it's the right idea and how fast they can go it. And then so one other thing I give you, a lady came to us, an entrepreneur, wanted to go to the market to service 401k services to underserved population. And the idea became quickly, we read that, and then she really liked it. Then she went to the investors, and they liked it. And then we created this simple platform so that they can do some pilots. And now she's launching the product big way into the market. So things like that, this type of culture, how we bring that from day one, thinking, doing it right. Same thing, the mature startups like Endeavor has a lot of them. And they also need help with the next step. How do we think through, how do we simplify our operations, making sure what the other business we can bring in, and then clear focus on those type of aspects too. With this kind of approach, really help the venture capital point of view.
The other thing about Raj is he's extremely humble. He said it took him too long to get to the approach, and that was 6 years. And what he has achieved, many people never achieve in a lifetime. So,
thanks. I think it's like focus is important. And the first company was a lot of struggle, building and brick by brick. And this one now, I think it can simplify and do much better. And that's the reason we're getting some good traction.
Raj, I know you mentioned talent, and we'll probably come back to that theme and that question, but before we do, I wanted to make sure to introduce James Chapman again. James, from Rock Ventures, is also an entrepreneur, started something called Plain Sight. We're going to hear a little bit more about that in the next panel, I believe. James, you and I have worked a little bit on ways to promote and attract and support entrepreneurs, but tell us specifically about the project you've been involved in called Demo Days.
Yeah, for the past 3.5 years I've been living in Detroit, and one of the biggest things that I've been able to pull off with the family of companies, Raj Ventures and Quicken Loans, is Detroit Demo Day is a $1.2 million pitch competition. And typically Demo Days and pitch competitions are dominated by tech companies, those that are high growth, high scale, but we oftentimes forget about the brick and mortar businesses, the retail businesses, the neighborhood businesses that have growth potential, but they need awareness to their business, they need to be celebrated, they need visibility, and they also need founder-friendly capital. And so I was talking a little bit backstage with Steve Case, right, with some of the, talking about the work that they're doing with Rise of the Rest, right? So when you think about going to a pitch competition and seeing a bakery and a barbershop, and a t-shirt company or whatever the case may be, as well as some tech companies all sharing the same stage, you start to truly see what Detroit entrepreneurship looks like and a true representation of that. I don't know if April Boyle is here with Build Institute, but Build is running a program or several programs that help people who are in the ideation stage go from idea to action, many of them retail and neighborhood businesses. Well, almost not half, probably a little less than half of those folks who make it onto demo day to receive anywhere between $50,000 and $300,000 from their business started at a program like Build Institute. And so you really get to see holistically what the entrepreneurship ecosystem looks like as, somebody who just has an idea to open up a bakery or a barbershop, go through a program like Build, and then at some point, after they have increased their business acumen, go on to receive some serious capital for growth and to be able to create local jobs for their businesses. And so we're just trying to find the talent, and we're trying to find the businesses that are promising, regardless of their industry, and celebrate them as well as put some money behind their businesses.
Annika, I saw you want to get in on this?
Because we have a really strong ecosystem. I think the challenge is that it's limited, right, in terms of access, and especially given the number of businesses that we have. And so there has to be, one of the reasons I really liked your networking diagram, Antonio, is because that's what we actually are finding is what's limiting some of these neighborhood businesses from accessing the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is like one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. If all of the businesses go into that ecosystem, they can't, April would say, don't call me. It's too, we have to be able, we need 10 Aprils. We need 10 Hatch Detroits. We need 10
Detroit Demo Days.
Yeah, exactly. All of them. We have to have more of these. And not just those, then, I know we're going to get into procurement, because I think procurement is one of the most important ways that you can actually grow companies and connect to middle class and higher income and growth opportunities for the industry right now as well.
Yeah, and my thing on the procurement side is corporations do spend a lot of money, right? We have to keep our operations going, and we need companies and services in order to do that, but it has to be deliberate. So if we're gonna want to do business in Detroit or do business with women or minority-owned companies, it has to be very deliberate, and it can't be just wishing and thinking it's gonna happen. You have to take action, and you have to say, this is what we want to do without giving up competitiveness or quality or delivery, because we have great companies here in Detroit and in Michigan. But you have to want to do it, and you have to put strategies and tactics in place in order to do that.
James, I want to come back to you, but while we're talking about procurement, I just want you to say a little bit more about why is DTE focused on this?
So we see it as a great thing. So number one, it's really boiled down. It started off as a big goal with the governor of Michigan back in 2010 of doing more business in Michigan in order to be a economic spur, a way of developing economic prosperity. And so we started moving forward and doing more business in Michigan, which was great. We went from $450 million to this year, now we're gonna be at $2.2 billion of business with Michigan companies, and over $600 million here in Detroit, and over $500 million with minority and women-owned firms. But what it really then became very apparent is, it's really about jobs. And in the end, people need to work. And if they do work, they're able to have homes and provide for their family and have dignity, which is a great thing. But then that also, for DTE, wraps right around to people need light, they need heat, and it's an ecosystem. It just comes right back around. But it really is about jobs. And then it gets into what kind of jobs, and really getting more specific to what the real need of the community is. And it's not just the higher level jobs and tech jobs, but also those jobs that require a high school degree or less. Because we do buy many services that require not such a high level of education, but just people that are willing to work and do a really great job.
So James, I want to get back to you, because you talked about the different companies and the ecosystem that supports it. You talked about high tech, you talked about Main Street, and the different ways you wanted to highlight and promote and connect the entrepreneurs. I want to talk specifically about entrepreneurs of color. Yeah. Because we were trying to draw this connection between the research that Annika was talking about, the loss of the black middle class, or put more positively, the opportunity to grow the black middle class. and Antonio's research about the nature of the high growth companies that are in the region. What have you seen through Detroit Demo Days or your experience as an entrepreneur to specifically comment about the landscape for people of color?
Yeah, well, the majority of the companies that come through Detroit Demo Day are minority or female-owned businesses, which is a great thing. And
how do we do that?
Well, you know, we make sure that the companies are Detroit-based or committed to relocating to Detroit. So that's first. And you know, if you focus on the companies that are here because of the demographics of the people who live in Detroit, by default, you'll get some of those, you know, minority and women-led businesses. So we make that a priority. And then when it comes down to selecting the finalists and things of that nature, we also take diversity very seriously. So as we're even looking at the finalists that we're about to put on stage, we're like, okay, let's make sure that we got companies from every industry. Let's make sure we got a good representation of people from different backgrounds and all of those types of things. So it's actually not that difficult in a city like Detroit to make sure to do it, as long as you're intentional. It just takes a little bit of effort and thinking about it on the front end. But the great thing about, you know, a program like Demo Day is not just the capital, but the inspiration. So we usually get nearly 2,000 people come out to watch this pitch competition every year. And so you have budding entrepreneurs that are in attendance watching somebody win $300,000 on stage for their tea business, right? And so now they're inspired to, you know, continue to work harder on their things. They want to increase their business acumen. They want to be on that stage as well. And so we feel confident that we'll continue to be able to not just see, you know, the past cohorts that have come through Demo Day, you know, be represented from different backgrounds, but going forward, we'll keep seeing it.
So we'll hear about Plain Sight later, and I know you're excited about that. What are some of the other companies that have come through Detroit Demo Day or that you're excited about?
Yeah, I'm really excited about Ellis Island Tea right now. They were the top winner of Demo Day last year. They're in Sam's Club. They're in a bunch of other stores. She's got some really huge opportunities in front of her. Sebastian with Social Grooming Club. He did a partnership with the NFL last year around their shop talks, right? So they are trying to educate people around really serious topics while getting your hair cut and things of that nature. Those are two that are kind of like I'm watching those because they've already been getting some national attention, and they're right here in the city of Detroit.
Antonio, you talked a little bit about sort of the large companies being one focus of attention, including trying to attract large companies here to build plants or to expand their businesses. And then you also talked about sort of early startups, and you called attention to sort of the ones in the middle, right? I'm curious to Tony. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get you all in too much of a fight here, right? But there is, I think, a debate that Antonio may have started or may have furthered. In economic development circles, there is a lot of emphasis on attracting large companies to a region. Antonio is posing a suggestion that you need to maybe put some more attention to the companies that are already here and helping them to grow. Your boss, Jerry Anderson, has been involved in creating a regional partnership that has among its strategies, core strategies, to try to attract businesses. I'm curious what that experience is like. Why is DT involved in that? And how does it connect back to some of the discussions we were talking about before about procurement?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. So number one, the goal, it needs to be pronounced, it needs to be deliberate. We want to do business with Michigan companies, Detroit companies, women and minority-owned companies from the top down. And we talk about that every week when we go through our metrics, and we drive towards that, and we think about creative ways of engaging people here in the city and companies here in the city. And you mentioned or asked about, well, how do you do that? How do you find minority or women-owned firms? Well, you have to change the way you do business. You can't sit in your corporate offices and think companies are going to come to you. You need to go to the neighborhoods. You need to go to the churches. Very faith-based community here in Detroit. We go to the churches and we go and talk and we offer up advice on what it takes to do business with DTE and just other advice and services that we have to offer. And people leave with the understanding of, yeah, I think I can do business with DTE and we make a connection, or I think I can do business through a tier one because I'm not quite at that level yet, or it's just not a connection. It's just not something we buy. So we have a lot of different tactics and ways of doing that. But bringing business here to Detroit and sustaining business here in Detroit is hugely important. And I think the one thing that we found is when we're procuring things, we include that as part of our evaluation, along with everything else. I mean, we give a little extra credit if you're from here in Detroit or here in Michigan, or if you're a minority or women-owned firm. So if everything was equal, competitiveness, quality, delivery, if you had that extra, you would win. So that's the way we do that. But we also find, the one big example we're dealing with right now is we're building a new power plant up in Bell River. We looked at local firms, we looked at national firms. There's a firm out of Kansas City that does a terrific job building these all over the country. It was obvious the best way to get this done was to work through that firm. But part of the qualification was you need to do business here in Michigan. You need to hire Michigan labor. You need to do business with Michigan, Detroit, minority and women-owned firms, and to the tune of $200 million. So it's not just about bringing in the company, but also that they need to do business here. And we also said, open up an office here in Detroit and work in Detroit, hire people from Detroit, and they've done that. So I think you can get and leverage your money and your procurements and still get everything you're looking for.
Raj, I want to go back to you and get back to this question of talent. Are you bullish about the talent that we have in Detroit? Do you see IT companies coming here for that talent, and why are they? Should we be optimistic about how we fight in the talent wars?
Today, the city is really a lot about the service economy. I think it's so important, especially for Detroit. And not only the tech companies are coming, but even for hospitality to attract a lot of talent to be groomed. I mean, we have talent, but we need to be groom them. So we need some vocational training centers, and also the companies get involved more, helping to bring that talent to the scale, which can really service. For instance, you take today Columbus, Des Moines, Iowa, and as well as the Nashville, Minneapolis, all these cities are growing because of they really started creating the talent to a large extent. And that's why in Detroit we have the talent, but how do we groom them in different areas? And so we can attract a lot of businesses to Detroit.
Can I just say one? I know we're running out of time, but we haven't really talked about financing for these businesses and access to capital beyond the wonderful work that Demo Days is doing and the other pitch contests are the true test of the growth of a business. For a lot of these businesses we're talking about is whether or not they can get the bank financing to grow their business. And I think that's probably the most troubling to us, is that these businesses they're not growing and they're not really able to access this kind of bank capital to further their business. So I don't know if any of us, I think that has to be a part of that conversation as well.
Absolutely. Capital is extremely important, and that's I think one other thing we still lack in Detroit. I think we need more venture capitalists need to come, including some private equity companies, and so it's extremely important.
Now, you said venture capital, private equity. You were talking about bank financing.
But I think it's both.
Yeah.
It is. It's hit or miss. I mean, certain entrepreneurs have figured it out, and others, I'd say figured it out. I really don't know how they're doing it, but many others have not, and it's just not easy. And it should be. If you have something that's a great idea or a great service, and your customers wanting you to grow, but you can't because you don't have the capital to do it, that's disappointing, and we need to break through that.
And I will say that there are some out there. There's Detroit Development Fund, there's Michigan Women's Foundation. So it could also be that we just need to bring more awareness to the financial institutions that are out there and that are available to help these businesses, because there's microloan programs out there, et cetera, et cetera. So it is some there. We could always use more, but also creating the awareness to the resources that are available, I think, is a missing piece as well.
Especially these microloans, short-term financing. A lot of fintech companies are there. We've got to attract them here to provide the short-term loans for them to cash flow perspective. They don't have the assets, but they have the cash flow.
Right. So we need capital, we need talent, we need connectedness. I think there's a number of ingredients that we're working on together and individually to try to strengthen this ecosystem. Any final quick thoughts from the panel, because we do need to get off the stage for the next one.
I'm very excited to see what's happening in Detroit, because I came 43 years ago when Detroit was what it is today. Phenomenal. I'm very, very excited about opportunities and how we can help to grow, and we all can take advantage of it. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, James. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Annika. Thank you, Tony. Thank you all.